All right, for this episode, we're not going to focus on the album cover. We're actually going to focus where the album cover comes from, or the record for that matter, and that is, of course, the record store. One of the benefits of buying records is going to the record store. Now, I'll tell you, I basically grew up in a record store. As soon as I was old enough to go to the store on my own, I went to a record store. Eventually, I got a job in a record store, and then, I continued going to record stores and buying records my whole life. And then nowadays, anytime my wife and we do any traveling, we go anywhere, we visit the record stores all around the world. We've been to London, Paris, Amsterdam, Brussels, Belgium has a lot of wonderful record stores, Strasbourg, France. Also, we've been through America, New York, Chicago, LA, Orlando has a great record store, San Francisco, New Orleans, Memphis, Nashville. I actually found a record store in a mall in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Yeah, of course, I bought some country records there. Now, the thing is, even though they were all different in some way, every one of those record stores was exactly the same. Everywhere you go, a record store is a record store. The employees, they're identical, no matter where you are, and it's just a cool thing. And now, of course, the same can be said about, bookstores or any other store like that, or 7-Elevens or McDonald's, but there's just something about a record store that sort of gives it a unique personality. I think the music really, of course, has a lot to do with that. So basically, there's kind of, two kinds of record stores, right? There's bigger record stores like your Amoeba in California or Sunrise Records in the malls of Canada here. And then there are the smaller record stores. And I don't necessarily mean small as in tiny, although some of them are pretty tiny at that, but small as in independent owners, local record stores owned by local people. Now, in the city I live in, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, very fortunate to have several great record stores. Calgary is a great record buying city. Now, among all of the record stores here in Calgary, Hot Wax Records in Kensington is the oldest. Not by much, but still, Hot Wax was the first. And recently, I had a chance to chat with Eddie Dalrymple, the owner of Hot Wax Records. And this is part one of my interview with a record store owner.
So when did you, Eddie, become the owner of Hot Wax?
Me and my two business partners, we bought it just over 3 years ago. It was 3 years in June. Yeah, about mid-June, yeah.
Do you know when Hot Wax opened?
1978. Yeah, it was 78, and it was about half a block that way, which it stayed at for a year and then moved to this location. Yeah, and we are the third owners, essentially.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So do you know who the original owner was?
That was it Chuck? I think Chuck is the original. Then it was Bob, and we bought it from Bob. I can't remember if there was another original first owner, because getting stories out of these guys tends to be quite hard.
Yeah. I'm imagining you're not just the owner, you were probably a patron for many years as well back in
For a long time, yeah. I remember, Bob was mostly here for the time that I was coming here, and I mean, it was always a very interesting store. It's Calgary's oldest store as well. It's slightly older than Recordland. Yeah, so that legacy is very important, right? I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Do you have any special kind of growing up buying records memories in Hot Wax?
Trying to talk to Bob, because he's a notoriously kind of he'll brush you off, kind of, and not give you the time of day. Just trying to buy something that perked his ear up, and he'd be like, oh, this, or, when you do those sorts of things, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I unlocked them somehow, or something like that. Especially at that time, right? I mean, it's changed a lot now, and we are trying to change that kind of thing. But for a long time, it was very gatekeepery and kind of foreboding, I guess.
Yeah.
Talking to those guys. Yeah.
What would you say is the best part about having Hot Wax here in Kensington Sunnyside?
Oh, just the people walking around. Just the people who are here to shop for the day. They want to go into every store. They want to kind of get the feel of the neighborhood and see what's happening, that kind of thing. It's, at the other shop that I do, it's not walk-in traffic at all, that kind of thing. So having that kind of just the community members come in and be like, oh, okay, this is here, this is changing, or do you have this now? You get a little bit more of that kind of community feel from down here, right?
We're at Hot Wax Records in Kensington, Sunnyside, talking with Eddie, the owner of Hot Wax. Now, the store's been here for over 40 years. Can you tell us about some of the changes it's gone through? You know, how did the store look when you first came here?
So when we first came in here, it had the classic green carpet that had been here for, I think, 15 years, 20 years, that was about as hard as cardboard. So I just tore all that up. We did some layers of floor, new bins. There used to be a kitchen up here, new lighting. God, I did lots, new countertops. Just kind of tore it apart piece by piece and like just improved things a little bit. The bins needed more space because we really wanted to fill it with stuff, right? And now it's jam-packed, which is great.
How about parking? When did parking become a thing? Like you could park back there all the time?
When we got it, parking was a thing. That was, I don't know, a big bullet point that I needed, because Calgary is still, I mean, we're trying to be a biking and walking city, but it's still very much like a driving city. We've got customers who, you know, live in all parts of the city that want to come here. And Sunnyside, Kensington can be a little hard to park in. So we do have parking.
Perfect. And a bike rack. Do you have a bike rack?
We do have a bike rack as well, of course.
Parking for everybody.
Parking for everybody.
It's a pretty iconic image in Calgary, the Hot Wax sign. Do you know who constructed that?
I don't know who made that. It's been here forever. There used to be, before that, there was a, what do you call it, a canopy kind of thing?
Right.
Out there. But it's been that way for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, something like that now. Yeah.
It's a pretty iconic sign.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's Calgary institution.
Yeah, it's great. And so you're just driving along the street and it's just right there.
Are you from Calgary, the area around here?
Yeah, I grew up in Spruce Cliff, just kind of up Bow Trail there.
Do you remember the first record you ever bought with your own money?
First record I bought was, I think, Sgt. Pepper, and it was on CD, of course. I bought that at Recordland. Bought tons of stuff at Recordland growing up. First record I ever bought here was a Fairport Convention record, which is a great band, still great, yeah.
How about working in a record store? When was your first job in a record store?
First job in a record store was Melodiya. Was Melodiya about 11 years ago, something like that now? Probably, was that 2009, I think? Yeah. And I've been doing it ever since.
Visiting with Eddie from Hot Wax Records in Kensington, Sunnyside. Eddie, do you remember the first record you ever sold?
First I ever sold? That's a hard one. I don't remember the first record I ever sold at all.
Yeah.
No.
That's easy to. Yeah,
That's
forget.
tough, man. That's tough. That's a long time ago. There's been a lot of records. Now I usually remember like what I'm selling to people. I try and remember their collection because that's a big part of it, you know? Now I have a bit better memory for that kind of thing too. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of it here at Hot Wax, any record store for that matter, is your sort of community customers, basically.
Oh, I mean, that's the fun part. That's the interesting part of being not only like, I know you like this, here, buy it or listen to it, but being like, this is like slightly adjacent to what you like. Maybe you should hear it. Maybe you should just buy it, take a chance on it. Maybe I'll play it for you, you know. That's the part that's really interesting, right? Is like trying to find people's kind of lane in their stream of what they like and, I don't know, making them happy, making their day, right? Because it should be fun.
Is there a record that you're proud of? Like, you know, because there's obviously tons of records that the record store guys hear.
Yes.
And you always like to recommend.
Totally.
So is there one that you've put on and sold and you're like, yeah, I knew that was a good one?
Oh, absolutely. My record for that is it's a reissue because the original is really rare, but the Lee Moses Time and Place. It's a reissue by Light in the Attic. It's a fantastic funk record that just like didn't hit and kind of just became a rarity because it didn't sell any copies. And it's a fantastic record. And since it's been reissued, it's like that one where when someone comes in and they're like, I need something different, or like, you know, which usually means like I collect rock records and I want to buy some jazz or some funk or like something like that. And the Lee Moses record is just like, here you go. That's the easy one. You're gonna love it and it's fantastic.
Walks out the door every time.
Every time, man. Every time, it's a sure thing.
Is there any sort of the strangest record you've ever sold? Like I didn't realize this was on record. Did anybody ask for something you thought was just out of this world, or something you've seen maybe come across your hands?
I mean, we've sold lots of like strange, you know, avant-garde music, weird, like just people doing noise and screaming and that kind of thing. The weirdest thing that happens lately, though, is just the things that you don't necessarily think of as being essentially things that sold well on CD that are just ubiquitous and just everywhere, but now coming out on vinyl in very expensive reissues that people are really looking for, you know, through the nostalgia factor and that kind of thing. So like, I don't know, the stuff like the Sarah McLachlan's and what would be other kind of things. Hootie and the Blowfish, biggest selling CD, Columbia Record Club was shoving it down in everyone's mailbox, that kind of thing, you know. And now that's something that people look for on vinyl. And as a record store person, you're like, but this is everywhere. You can get it for free, basically. Yeah, but yeah. So that's kind of that's the weirdest thing that I feel like has happened, where it's just like, and I'm totally into it, but it's just every time I see one of those reissues or something, I'm like, oh yeah, but this is everywhere. If you like CDs, you could have it for free.
So there you have it, part one of my conversation with Eddie Dalrymple, the owner of Hot Wax Records and Melodiya Records here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Now there's plenty more in part two. We find out about the success, for better or for worse, of Record Store Day. What's that like these days? Also, what's behind the current high prices of most new releases? They're getting up there. Plus, you'll never guess what the most valuable records are these days, and do people really still buy cassette tapes? That's all in part two of Interview with a Record Store Owner.